will come in, but really good to see so many people, and welcome to techUK. My name is, maybe I'll go on the stage. My name is Rory, and I'll kind of kick us off here today. But first thing to say is welcome to this event, which is part of National Careers Week and techUK's TechTogether campaign, which is a month-long series of initiatives around promoting equality, diversity and inclusion within the tech sector. There's an awful lot to get involved with, so do check it out on our website. But this is an event that I'm particularly excited about, which is all about emerging tech, which is my area. So first thing before we kick off, there isn't meant to be a fire alarm today. So if you hear a very loud alarm, then it's out the door and turn right. It's the fire exit, but not expecting anything. So quick overview of the agenda. Here it is. I'm going to do a quick 10 minutes talking about emerging tech, which should be fun. And then we've got two really good panels. First one, we've got 4 speakers. Second one, we've got 5 speakers. Loads of really valuable insights, bit of inspiration, lots of information, I hope, with a short break in the middle. And then networking in our members area, which is literally just next door, with pizza and drinks. So that's the plan for the day. So I'll start by just introducing myself. So I'm Rory. I lead techUK's emerging tech and innovation activity. And I do a fair bit of presenting on emerging tech, but the brief for this was be a bit different and do something outside what I usually do. So please excuse the weird slides. But this is my overview of how I got into emerging tech, what I do, and what I think about the sector and how you can get involved. So here we go. So firstly, a bit of a montage of random clips, but this is to give you a flavor of what we do at techUK in emerging tech. The answer is lots of weird and crazy things, from meeting humanoid robots in the top right to looking at vacuum cleaners with robotic arms that pick up socks in the bottom left, to Tesla's robo-taxi, bottom right. That's not a real baby on the left. That's a robotic baby that's used in like TVs and TV shows and films, which is very creepy up close. But to give you a flavor, anything AI, quantum, robotics, space, gaming, immersive, we're all over it at techUK, and in particular in my team. So in terms of how I got into this area, first kind of learning, I guess, is that there's definitely, my background is not technical. That's me as a baby and as a slightly older child. I think I was looking through photos of me as a child to see, like, was I interested in tech? Did I ever like do anything technical? No, I just ate cereal and stared at the camera. And I think this was a good learning for me that, you know, the classic example is like someone was coding from the age of 2 and then they were hired by Google at 6, and before you know it, they're designing rockets. But that is definitely not the case. I studied a different, I'll come on to that now, but a different subject, and I was just a normal baby like most other people. Although I would say follow your curiosity. This is me inside Concorde, which is the kind of supersonic plane that was retired in the early 2000s, but was really cool when it happened. And I managed to sneak into the cockpit one time, which is yeah, I don't know how I could do that. But I guess the point of that is, yeah, I didn't study anything technical. My parents weren't technical, etc. But looking back, actually, I did have a bit of a fascination with machines, planes, technology. Could have kind of seen this coming. And follow your passion, even if it's not tech. So my background's actually in politics, where this was me standing for Parliament in 2017. You can guess which party. But I think the parallels really were, I wanted to kind of do something that changed things and that made a difference and moved the dial. And I started off thinking that was politics. I then moved into tech. Longer term, I want to go back into politics. But, you know, lots of people that I work with in the sector get into tech through a kind of parallel field or in a field with transferable skills, and then find that tech is just the best vehicle to follow their passion or to play to their strengths. So hopefully that's a bit of inspiration as well. The future has arrived. It's just not evenly distributed yet. Many people doubt whether this person said this. I've done a lot of research. I think they did. But this, I think, is a fantastic point because, you know, if we stood in this space 100 years ago talking about, I don't know, the telegram, that would be emerging tech. And it was, you know, at one point invented, deployed, but not at scale. There are many, many technologies around us today that we would view as futuristic, but are kind of, people are using them day to day. And the only thing that really, the interesting thing is that they're just not deployed at scale, and they'll be futuristic until they become commonplace. So they're kind of moving from the magical to the mundane is something you hear a lot in emerging tech. I want to give you two examples that have stuck with me that I've experienced the past year or so working in this space, that I think demonstrate just how interesting it is to be in this field, but also that it's the future is here right now, and you can experience it and work on it, which I think is very cool. So the first one is self-driving vehicles, autonomous vehicles. So Waymo, a spin-off of Google, launched in 2009 in a few US cities. And this was, I'm going to play a very short video, but this was me experiencing one in San Francisco last year. Then I start talking, so I'm not going to play that, but it's embarrassing. So good example of a company that's been around quite a while, doing amazing things and kind of built on Google Maps was really like a key inception point for the self-driving vehicle to spin out of, because they knew they'd mapped the roads already, so why not build a car that could navigate them? And they had the sensors to capture anyway. So Waymo is really cool. I speak to my parents, my grandparents, they'd be like, oh my God, self-driving cars, they exist. They do. And the crazy thing is they're coming to London in hopefully this year, which is really exciting. So on the left is the launch announcement in the London Transport Museum a few months ago, where they said, we're coming to London. And on the right, that's our program manager for transport and mobility, Robert, looking very smiley. So I think that's one example. The future is here. It's not evenly distributed, but we'll experience it here very soon. The pace of adoption is accelerating, which is really exciting in emerging technologies. And then the second is immersive technology, which I quickly want to highlight. So I'll play the video and then I'll show you. So this was the same trip, but in Vegas was the Sphere, which is a very, very large ball of LED screens. It's actually 16K quality. And this is an immersive show within Sphere. On the left, you can see smart glasses, VR, AR, augmented virtual reality glasses, and how they're predicted to take off. I think the key point here is there was one Sphere, but already millions of these devices are being sold on our faces, and the market could go potentially through the roof, particularly with Meta and others, big players backing them. Again, the technology, the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I'll end with this very long quote. It's very long. I frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And that is a very interesting question. It's a very common one. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that this second question is actually the more important of the two, because you can build a business strategy around the things that are stable in time. When you have something that you know is true, even over the long term, you can afford to put a lot of energy into it. So Jeff Bezos said that apparently at some point. But I think the point really is that what's not going to change? Well, the drivers behind why emerging tech is important, you know, the need for communication from telegrams to immersive technology remains. The means is the tool is different. And so I think this is such a fast-moving, exciting field, and I'm really, really, you know, thrilled to be in it. But I'm also in a field that is centuries old in many other ways. I'll end with a promotional plug, but please do follow me on LinkedIn. Every week I post about all of this and a lot more stuff across AI, quantum, space, and everything else. But just to say, I'm always really open if you want to chat about what a career in emerging tech looks like in practice, what we do at techUK on this subject, and how to get in a driverless car. But yeah, for listening. I'm now going to hand over to Ella and our panelists for the first panel.
I tried.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ella. I work in Rory's team here at techUK. I'm a junior program manager for emerging technology. I started techUK around 7 months ago, having done an internship at one of the UK's catapults, looking at deep tech innovation policy. Prior to that, I did politics and international relations at university, so I have absolutely no technical background, but I've come into techUK and I'm building a career looking at all these really interesting emerging technologies, and something that I'm just really, really enjoying. I'm joined today by a fantastic panel of technical and non-technical experts who all have careers in emerging tech, but all come from very different backgrounds and very different pathways to reach where they are today. So I'd love to introduce my panelists, and Catherine, perhaps I can start with you. If you can tell us a bit about your role at Pragmatic Semiconductor and what you do.
Is that working? Oh, it's better. Right. So my name's Catherine Ramsdale. I am SVP of Technology at Pragmatic Semiconductor. We are a company that makes flexible electronics. So instead of making it out of silicon like you get in your phone or your computer, we make it out of completely different materials, which allows us to make flexible circuits which bend. And that means we can put them into different types of products like packaging and things where you're looking for functionality that you, that flexibility is the functionality we offer that you don't get from silicon. So that will allow for things like item level tracking, provenance tracking, looking at the grey market, helping with, for example, deposit and return schemes with recycling. So it's got massive opportunity. We have a factory in the northeast where we can produce billions of chips per year. And there's plenty of very varied roles for people in our sector, not just people who've come from a technical background, although my background is very technical, but also lots of different skill sets, and not necessarily people with degrees either. We need lots of technicians and maintenance staff and those kinds of skill sets as well. So we have a very wide range of possible opportunities for people wanting to work in tech.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Talking of coming from non-degree backgrounds, Freddie, can I come to you next and hear a bit about your role at Digital Catapult and also how you got there?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Freddie. I was an apprentice product manager at Digital Catapult where Ella used to work, and I came completely different from Catherine. I'm not technical in any way. I studied English, psychology and biology at school, nothing really related to emerging tech that much except for the med sector. And it was a complete accident that I got into Digital Catapult. We are a company that works in upskilling the UK in terms of tech. So we look at a lot of accelerators. We like to boost up a lot of SMEs. My current project is looking at supply chains. If anyone is interested in that, please don't be. But we do a lot of cool things with tech. We work in 5G, AI, immersive tech, quantum. Do I understand all of it? No. Do I still get to work with really cool tech and learn about it? Yes. Does it mean I'm always involved? Not all the time, but through the apprenticeship, I was able to develop it, a lot of my skills. And I think it's scary when you don't know something. And it's only when you know, you realize it's not that scary.
Brilliant, thank you. And Dan, would you like to introduce yourself, what you do at Scale AI, as I know you come, like myself, from a non-technical background?
Yeah, nice to meet you all. So I'm Dan, I lead government affairs and policy for a company called Scale AI. We're probably about the 5th largest AI builder in the world outside of China. So you've got OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever Elon's doing, and then us. And we kind of sit in the kind of data layer of the tech stack. So you've got data, algorithms, like people that code, and then the chips. And we sit in that data piece. We also do a lot of applications work, so like smaller models for specific use cases, and that can be either for government or for big companies. And then the final kind of piece of our business is test and evaluation, so making sure that the models are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're also safe and secure. So because we work for all these AI labs that are building ChatGPT and Claude, we will measure how successful they are in the next iteration.
Thank you. And may I ask you, some of our attendees in the room today might have seen in the media around AI changing jobs and the nature of the job market. Do you have anything you can kind of share with us on that?
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff about AI taking jobs. I think there's 2 truths to this question. The first, in the short term, is that I'd say AI is probably at 10% of its potential at this current moment. If we look at AI as a ladder, you have level 1 to level 5. We would call Microsoft Copilot level 1, ChatGPT level 2, and then that goes up to superhuman intelligence, which no one knows how to do yet. Level 5. We're still in terms of adoption of this kind of level 1, level 2 area, and I find it. I mean, I kind of have like a healthy skepticism when you see the companies announcing that AI is replacing a human. That the reason behind that is because Microsoft Copilot is doing that job. Ultimately, these are models and machines that require a human prompt, and so the human still needs to be involved. I'd also question whether if AI is a useful kind of excuse for some of these companies to make these decisions. On the other hand, we do think that the advent of autonomous systems is going to see a big change in how AI and the workforce interacts. I think I don't want to be corny and use like the Industrial Revolution or the internet as an example, but we are going to see the job market change in the next few years. I think people will have to kind of chunk up, which by nature of you guys all being in the room, I guess is what you're doing. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I would also just end actually by saying that the AI sector has created 5 million jobs over the last couple of years, and we're seeing a 70% growth year on year in terms of non-technical roles in AI. So it's a shifting paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a change, as you say. And I think that's something that's really important to remember, as it does open new opportunities as well. Charlie, last but certainly not least, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do at the Financial Conduct Authority?
Sure, thanks, Ella. Hello, everyone. My name's Charlie Markham. Before I start, actually, let me just say thank you for inviting us onto the panel, and thank you, TechUK, for hosting this event as well. Hopefully you find it interesting. So my name's Charlie Markham. I'm a technical specialist at the Financial Conduct Authority. For those of you who don't know what that is, we are the UK's financial services regulator. We are there to regulate financial services with sort of three lenses, one around consumer protection, one around market integrity, and the other one around promoting good and fair competition. But increasingly, we're thinking about positive outcomes and tech. And I work in the emerging tech and research team there, and I lead our work on quantum computing and quantum security. And maybe I'll talk a little bit, I can now or later on talk a little bit how I got there.
I think that'd be great. Yeah. What led you to that role?
Yeah. So when I was preparing for this panel, I was thinking about the best way to talk about my experiences and how I got here. And instead of listing out job roles or things that I've done, I thought it might be more useful to talk about careers and early careers as a set of lessons that you might learn going forward, and maybe tell a bit of my story through that way. So the first lesson I really want to share with everyone is you can just do things. And it's really great to see some of you here today just doing things. But in my early career, or at least at university, similar to Ella, I was studying international relations and global politics. I studied this because I really wanted to know how the world was changing and what that meant for me as an individual, but us as society. But increasingly, I found myself pulled towards tech and wanting to write about tech. Was cyber warfare the new battleground for states? How would technology improve direct democracy? And in 2019, I wrote my master's thesis on whether liberal democracy would survive social media. And at the time, that felt really niche. But the key lesson in all of this, and the one thing that I want you to take away from that early step, is your early career in university gives you structures. And it's really on you to adapt and change those structures to suit your curiosities and your end goals. And when you do, you'll find that your work improves, your motivation improves, and what you end up doing accelerates as well. The second lesson I want to talk about is failure, because I think it's such an important one in your early career. Knowing you're going to fail, knowing that failure is actually a prerequisite for progress. So when I left university, I was a first-generation university goer. Some of you in the room may feel similar. And I felt a big pressure to make it worth something, to actually commercialize that value. So I made the logical decision, as most people do. I decided I was going to be an investment banker. I spent 18 months studying for the CFA, which is a professional exam, and I was self-teaching, and I failed. I failed really, really badly, and it made me quite miserable for an 18-month period. And it took a lot of courage to turn around and tell my parents, actually, that this wasn't for me. But what I learned is I was interested in financial services, but I just wasn't interested in crunching numbers. And then that led me to my second job, which was more in the digital policy and lobbying space, actually quite similar to what you do, Ella, but for a different organization. And that was closer to my interests. But I hadn't yet understood how to be effective in the workplace. I hadn't learned how to be reliable. I hadn't learned how to be consistent in my outputs. And for a long period, I found myself blaming everyone except myself. And it's really because I just had such a massive failure. I wasn't ready to accept another one. I wasn't really ready to reflect and learn on that. But that was a really important period for me because it taught me actually some of the most important lessons. It taught me what I liked, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, and where I needed to improve. So that's really lesson 2 in my story, which is learning to fail, living with it, and learning from it. And just one final thing, if I can, or am I running over? One final thing, complete your side quests. That's it, complete them. What changed my career path in 2019, 2020 is I started volunteering for DeFi communities. For those of you that don't know, DeFi is decentralized finance. It's around blockchains, it's around tokens. And I was doing this to escape a job that I hated. So I would finish at 5 o'clock, I would go home, I'd load up Discord, I would be chatting, I would be researching. But the important thing about your side quests is when it comes to the job market, it gives you perspective and experience that other candidates don't have. So when the Financial Conduct Authority spun up this emerging tech and research team, I was in a perfect position and I was their first external hire. And now I lead the research there on quantum computing and quantum security. So that's a bit of my background. Hopefully sharing some of those lessons about what I've learned on the way is useful for you in the room.
Fabulous, thank you. So as you can see, we represent 5 individuals working in the tech sector, but all from very different backgrounds, doing different roles. But that just shows you how diverse the tech sector is with the roles, technologies and different areas that there are to make a career out of. So I think let's dive into our first discussion topic. We know that there's a wide range of technical and non-technical skills that we probably all use every day, but I'd be really keen to hear what are some of the ones that you think are really key to succeeding in your role or in the tech sector more broadly? So, Catherine, perhaps I can come to you about the role of communication within the tech sector and why you think that's important.
So I think, well, that's important. My background is entirely technical. So I did a physics degree, a physics PhD, everything I did said you're going to be in the tech sector. What became apparent, though, once I was in the tech sector, is that often communication is actually one of the more important skill sets. Your ability to work out equations and figure out what's happening in a particular material set, for example, is not as important as your ability to tell other people why they should care about it. So in my role now, and part of the reason I have my role now is having a broad overview of everything we do as a business and being able to connect across different skill sets why what's happening in one place is important somewhere else, and how you simplify what you're talking about so that the other person can follow what you're saying, because each piece is individually complicated, but you have to be able to abstract it so that other people can understand why it's important to them. And that means communication, clear communication and very simple communication is absolutely key in any tech role, and is often overlooked, especially by technical people, because at university you're taught to, it gets harder and harder and harder, it gets harder and harder to explain, so you just have to learn it. But actually being able to explain it, something complicated in a very simple way, is absolutely critical to making progress in any role, in any tech job.
May I ask, is that something you've learned on the job as you've gone throughout your career, how to communicate clearly, simply, effectively?
Yes. So I think back to the other point, it requires a lot of self-reflection. And I use at work a phrase all the time, which I think is really important, which is assume positive intent, which means that when something goes horribly wrong, that's not because the person who's telling you about it intended for it to be like that. What it means is somewhere along the line, somebody didn't understand something. And every time that happens, and obviously that happens quite a bit, you need to step back and go, okay, why did we end up here? How did the message get miscommunicated and where? And as soon as you do that, and I do that a lot in my role, and I encourage my teams to do that, you can look back at what you've said and how you've done it and go, what was my part of this problem? What did I do to contribute to this error? Because you will have done something, same as everybody else in the room did something. So when you can build that self-reflection in, a bit to your point, is if you can build that self-reflection in and don't immediately become defensive about a mistake you may have made or blame the other person for something that you think they've done wrong, then you can learn how you should have communicated it to have got to the right answer. Because in the end, you're working for an organisation, you want your organisation to succeed for many different reasons. So does the person sitting next to you. So you've both got the same goal. So whatever went wrong because you didn't communicate properly. And if you can learn that, then you can work out what you did wrong. And every time you do that, you improve. And since I've been doing it for 25 years, I would like to think by now I'm better than I was when I started, but I still make mistakes. I still had one this morning and I looked at it and thought, that was my bit of that one. But you've got to learn not to dwell on that and just look at it as a learning opportunity for you and the other person, and make sure you both learn from it.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's so relevant to me in my role with the amount of collaboration that I do in my job in the tech sector. Is a lot of working with other people, to communicate to other people what you're trying to do, what the vision is, but then also I think to reflect in collaboration with others about where something went wrong as well. Charlie, would you like to build on that at all? I know you did slightly in your previous answer.
Yeah, I think Catherine makes some fantastic points. I'd maybe just put it into slightly different language. I think a lot about my role is about translation, and Catherine's already spoken to this. In emerging tech, you're speaking to highly technical experts, and then policymakers, and then compliance and risk teams, and then decision makers in businesses. And it's learning how to translate those complex ideas into different audiences. And again, when I was reflecting on this panel and perhaps some people in the audience, I was kind of thinking, well, people already do this a lot. Whether it's your first day at university, or it's a new job you've just started, or you're working with a group of whole new people, you have to think about how to change your language, your examples, your tone of voice to make sure that your ideas are landing with different audiences. And I think we call that code switching. And I think most of you in this room will have some experience of it. And it's just about actually translating that into a corporate environment.
Brilliant, thank you. And on the subject of transferable skills, Dan, any skills that you think are really important for a career in emerging tech from your own experience or what you've observed?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to have like, an engineering degree. You don't have to be exceptionally technically gifted. I think that you have to be opportunistic about your own talents and then try and work out how that provides value to whichever part of the tech environment you're in. So yeah, just do something exceptionally well. It might not be technical, and find a place for that in the tech sector.
Maybe having a strategic advantage that you can offer to a role or an organisation or something in the sector. Freddie, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's probably a bit counterintuitive, but there is a selfish side to communication as well. There is obviously the part where you want to communicate as a group, as a team, and you want to build yourselves up. But as an individual, try and be as selfish as possible. I always got told, like, say yes to everything. Do all opportunities that you can that come your way. And in my extensive 3 years, super long career, I have learned that saying no and learning how to say no properly is probably one of the best ways of communication, especially in emerging tech. A lot of my job is going to users and going, yeah, no, that's not happening. And then going back to my engineers going, no, we can't build that. We need to do something else. And you say no so often that you learn how to do it much more effective, but you can use it selfishly as well. If you don't understand something, tell them, no, start again. Teach me again, because there's nothing wrong with not understanding and there's nothing wrong with asking until you understand. So you'll be as selfish as you possibly can. And that's how you see a lot of your growth, because then you'll start to understand things. Whereas if you sit on your own, you're in a little silo and it only breaks when you decide, okay, I don't understand, hold up everyone, please help. And then you do, and then you get back to that teamwork and you come back as a team and the communication flows a lot easier, but it all starts as you and as an individual. So in terms of transferable skills, communication is a big one, but I'd say being selfish about your communication.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to dive a bit deeper into some of the entry pathways into tech, whether that's what you've all done personally or what your organisations can offer. So Freddie, kind of sticking with you, you obviously took an apprenticeship after finishing school. Could you tell us a bit about why you chose that pathway and why it was right for you?
Yeah, my school was very heavy on go to uni, get a job, do this, do that, you'll be fine, you'll be set. My parents are very similar. I've always struggled with school. I didn't like it that much. I've got ADHD, and I know it's a buzzword now, but it was a real strong point for me where I suffered for no reason. And then I realized why, and I understood it, and I realized uni is not the option for me. And if anyone knows how to get like £30 back from UCAS, it'd be really helpful, because they've spent money for no reason there. But I then spent an entire summer going, what else is there? Because uni is not the option. And I think everyone hears apprenticeships and you think your automatic thought is bricklayer, someone that works in construction, because that's what it was for a very long time. But there are now apprenticeships in all areas, in all sectors. I'm pretty certain you can get level 7 apprenticeships in the medical sector. So if you wanted to go into medicine and be a nurse or a doctor, you can do an apprenticeship for it now. And that's how I started looking. I actually got into this role specifically completely by accident. Like Charlie, I thought, what's good for money? Money. Maybe I could do an apprenticeship in money. So I looked at doing a lot of finance roles. Would I have enjoyed that? No, because I'm not someone that likes looking at Excel sheets every day. But as soon as my current employer showed me this job description and level 6 apprenticeship for a product manager, which was all about exploring new emerging tech, understanding it, being able to communicate with it, playing with those kinds of tools, which, by the way, some of them are really cool, I instantly went, yeah, that sounds so much better. But then I also get a degree at the end of it. I get 2 qualifications. I have 3 years of work experience, which makes me going for any of the, shocking statistic, careers for new graduates has now dropped under 10,000 for the first time in a couple of years, which is terrible. But I have the advantage, I have an edge, because I took a path that was unconventional to the rest.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And as Freddie mentioned earlier, we both started our careers in the same organisation, but very, very differently. I was a graduate intern, you're an apprentice, you're more on the technical side, more on the policy, government affairs side. So it just shows the broad range, I think, of careers and entry pathways. Dan, a little bit maybe about your pathway to your role, or about how you got to where you are now at Scale AI.
Yeah. So I actually am coming up to my 1-year anniversary at Scale and also in tech. I had no intention of going into the tech sector. I started off after university working in Parliament for a couple of MPs. And after that was done, I went to public affairs. And actually one of my first clients was those damn cars, the Waymos. And it was so complicated, it put me off tech completely. So I moved into other sectors in public affairs and I really enjoyed it. And then after about 7 years or so, it started to feel slightly monotonous. So I was looking at what was the most challenging industry and client that I have, and it was Scale. So I insisted that they give me a job. And that's kind of, how I ended up in my job. I basically saw the opportunity. They were looking at expanding from the US into the UK. I'd helped with their market entry, and I thought, there's a job there for me.
Wow. And if you don't mind me asking, so were you quite proactive? It wasn't a role that was necessarily advertised.
Yeah. So they did create the job for me. I was very pushy, and I said, you guys need this role. I do think they did, but I said otherwise.
Brilliant, thank you. Catherine, coming from a more technical background, did you always know that the tech sector was for you, and what are the opportunities like for early career starters at Pragmatic?
Well, yeah, so I did a technical A-levels, I then did a technical degree, and then I did a technical PhD, which was in photovoltaics actually, but it was also flexible photovoltaics. And then I transitioned to a startup looking at flexible transistors, which is not the startup I'm with now. And then moved through there to be number 6 at the company, the number 6 employee at the company I'm at now, and we're now 350. So that kind of progression gave me a much wider view of tech, because when you're a very small company, you do a bit of everything. And as you get bigger, you end up managing the teams that do a bit of everything. And eventually you know a bit about everything, but you don't know necessarily a whole heap about any specific piece, but you have experts for that. Now that we're a much bigger organisation, we have lots of different routes in. As I mentioned earlier, we have semiconductor equipment, which is exactly the same manufacturing equipment that you use to make the silicon chips that, say, TSMC make, that are in your phones and computers. So you need skilled equipment technicians and people who maintain equipment. So there's a route in there. We have degree apprenticeships. I'm a big fan of those, because you get to do your degree alongside the apprenticeship. We have several people on that. We also do have some level 7 apprenticeships, which is equivalent to a master's. That has now closed. The government's not funding level 7 anymore, from now. But we have people at all stages of their careers, from early stage apprenticeship right the way through to level 7. And that means that they're learning whilst doing their work, which is an absolutely excellent way in. We have people coming in from summer placements from universities to effectively try it out, see what they like in the tech sector or maybe don't like in the tech sector. And we've had people come back from that. You can also do things like at university, there's a scheme called Knowledge Transfer Partnership, which is a bit like doing, you're employed by the university, but you work for the company, and that allows you to keep your feet in both camps for a period of time longer than you otherwise would be able to, and allows the company to work with the universities directly. So that's another route in, and we've had some great success there too, with people who've done that then coming to join us at Pragmatic, or conversely staying at the university, but gives us connections into the groups at the university that we want to work with. So that's another route in. And then the standard graduate entry points as well. So we have a bit of everything coming in, I would say.
Wow, a huge selection and breadth of routes there. And I think that just shows how the career market is changing with all these different routes that maybe weren't there, and new opportunities for certain areas of technology that maybe weren't there a few years ago as well. Charlie, can I come to you? Anything you'd like to add about pathways and anything that you've learned from your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to just give the example of my team, because it's incredibly diverse, it's incredibly multidisciplinary. So we currently have a data science graduate in our team who's actually working on the correlation between trust and competitiveness. We have a lawyer who's studying for the bar, but is currently researching smart contracts and crypto. We have a ex-startup operator, ex-founder turned academic who's now a futures and foresight horizon scanning specialist. And we have a PhD in quantum computing in our team as well. And then, of course, there's me, who's actually leading the quantum computing program. So there are many different routes, actually, and many different pathways, and I think that's one of the strengths of our sector. People go through boot camps, people do apprenticeship schemes, graduate schemes, people build and then move across, and people switch careers. So there's many different ways and pathways, but perhaps something to take away that might help you make headway into an emerging tech career. Two things. One of them is networking, and I really, really used to hate when people said that to me, especially in my early career. Number one, because I hated it. I hated speaking to people. I found it so awkward. You don't know what to say. You don't know how to add value. You don't know how to have an effective conversation. But I put it that actually most people think about networking wrong. I used to think about it as, let me connect with these seniors on LinkedIn. Let me drop them a message, or maybe ask someone to go for a coffee. But actually, the most important people that you can network with are going to be your peers, right? So people who are in this room with you. And there's two reasons for that. One, you have similar life experiences. Your conversations become a lot easier when you have shared interests, shared experiences. And two, as they grow, you will also grow. So networking isn't about finding your next job now. It's about how those networks compound over time and how you begin to open doors for each other as your careers mature and progress. And the final thing, if I can quickly just add, is making your interests visible. So when I first left university and I was applying for jobs in digital policy and tech, I started writing a series of Medium blogs. I'm not sure if Medium's still running, but I wrote a series of Medium blogs. And one of the first ones I wrote was on whether university gave students the skills that they need to succeed in the workplace. That resulted in my professor of political economics commenting on my post and telling me that I was really wrong and I completely misunderstood it, and then taking that further and DMing me. And that made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, but it got engagement, it got visibility. And that's really what I think employers in emerging tech are looking for. They're not looking for perfect CVs. They're looking for signals that you're curious, they're already interested in subjects, and that you're making that visible to them so that when roles become available, they can make a safer bet on you.
Thank you. I think, putting yourself out there as well summarises that really nicely. Just to sort of finish this section of the panel, Catherine, may I come to you about women in tech? We know that women are more underrepresented in the sector. Do you have any observations on that through your career journey, how that's maybe changed and what that looks like at Pragmatic?
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. So when I was at university, for example, I did physics, Imperial, that it was one woman for every 7 men. Across the whole university, because it's all tech. And well, the way that I personally dealt with that is, you're all engineers, you've all got a diversity in some shape or form. It's just obviously it's a bit more visible in a gender situation, but there's loads of different things that cause you to be diverse. So I just ignored it and carried on going. Pragmatic actually were pretty good in terms of gender balance. It's not 50-50 because it's a tech company, but it's pretty good. And we look at routes for how do you support people in different life stages and how do you support people with different commitments. So specifically things around, for example, when I first started and there were only 6 people, I went to Pragmatic having 2 very small children, and I joined and I said, well, I can't guarantee my work hours will have to be between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That's what I said. And they said, okay, for a while. And actually, because it was a startup and I had the experience, I just didn't want to do the time, that was acceptable and it worked on both sides. And so I would say there's a part there about making sure you say what you need, but we also have people who have religious reasons for wanting to perhaps they need certain times off in the week, or you have to be more think about Ramadan, for example, and exactly how does that affect your work pattern. So there's always something. So I think over time what's happened in certainly in our industry is a much more awareness, not just about gender awareness, but also about all the other things that make people diverse and how you accommodate all those different requirements that your workforce have, because what I've found historically in my career is if you treat people like they're adults because they are adults, then they will treat you as an organisation with respect as well, and you will get the best out of your workforce if you accept that there's a range of reasons why people need to adapt their working pattern, for example, to cope with their out of work requirements, and that it's definitely changed in the course of the 25 years that I've been employed. It's 15 years since I said to Pragmatic, I can only work from 7 till 2 on a Thursday. So I would say we were quite far ahead of our time at that point, because I was working from home. That wasn't as acceptable generally in tech until the pandemic, and now it's everywhere. But I was able to do that because it was how does your skill set meet what's needed for the business versus what you need the business to give to you. So it's about making sure that it's clear on both sides what's needed from each other. It's a contract after all. They give you something, you give them something, and making sure that that's communicated effectively. And if that is done, then it can work for all parties. And I think that's definitely progressed over the course of the last 20 years from what I've seen in tech.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think what I'm hearing from a lot of you is the proactiveness that a lot of you have taken into your career. I mean, particularly yourself, creating a role almost just by being proactive. It's not always kind of, I guess, handed to you sometimes when you're looking for a career or a certain pathway. Before I come to our panel for a few closing remarks, I just want to flag that we're going to open up to a short audience Q&A. So please start to have a think about some questions that you might like to ask our panelists. So if I come down the panel, starting with you, Charlie, maybe you could just share one key takeaway for our attendees today about a career in emerging tech.
Yeah, sure. I think the thing to say is it can take a while to figure out what you're actually passionate about, and following that passion. Everyone always says to you, follow your passion. That's great. But I'm here to let you know that can take a while for you to figure out. Some people will immediately find what they love, land in it, and that's great. And other people might take more of a winding route to a passionate career, or a career that they're passionate about, like myself. So my advice to you is really stay curious, give yourself the opportunity to explore, to fail, to feel really, really uncomfortable. And through that process, you'll figure out more and more about what you're passionate about. And I tend to think that by doing that, you'll find a job for you, the job will find you instead of you trying to conform to a job for it. So just have a little bit of faith that as you emerge from that process, so will the opportunities. That's it.
Didn't think this far ahead. Yeah, I agree with everything that Charlie just said. You have to be very proactive in a lot of things. I think the most important for me, though, is no one's journey is the same, and we've all shown that. And also, none of our journeys will be the right one for you. And no matter how many times you can be told, "Oh, do an apprenticeship because I'm up here and I'm quote mark successful," does that mean that an apprenticeship is right for you? It's up to you. So whatever journey you pick, make sure it's what you pick and not what someone else does, as that's how you end up in a career that you want to do, that you actually enjoy, and that you get a lot of gratification from. Because otherwise, you'll end up just cruising along, not really enjoying what you want, and always looking at the next thing, kind of missing your passion. And sometimes Charlie's right with that again. You can't find it. Sometimes it just finds you. But the only way you can do that is by going through the journey that you pick and that you choose. So it's a nice balance.
Well, I guess I'd echo that. I would say knowing what it is you are prepared to do and not prepared to do. So echoing back to my earlier career, I'm not prepared to do this, or I must go to the celebration assemblies, or whatever it was when the children were little. But being very clear on what you are prepared to accept, and the company being very clear on what it's prepared to accept, means that between you'll find out whether or not it's the right fit for you. And maybe you do have to take something at the start, or that kind of, okay, maybe it will become a fit, and you realize that it isn't because you're trying to find where your boundaries are. But once you found that, then I think it is important to be clear with yourself, at least, that these are my boundaries. And then if you are going to, give up on one of them, at least that's what you're doing. But understand, clarity for yourself is the only way that you can make your career path work. because they are all different.
Yeah, I think I had like a lot of imposter syndrome when I first started my job last year. And what I've come to realize is there is a lot of nonsense, particularly on Twitter, of people that think they know what they're talking about and they don't. And I think, firstly, don't worry about knowing everything that's happening across even just the AI sector, because you just never will. There's too much information out there. And secondly, once you have found something that you really enjoy, you learn on the job. And I think that is the best way to go about it. Don't worry about not knowing enough before you join.
Thank you so much. And I think I would just echo about learning on the job. I mean, for me, I came into this job with the transferable skills, but not necessarily the exact skills. And sort of learning and growing a career on the job, I think, is something that I wasn't really told enough at university and school, and that wasn't hammer homed enough. So thank you so much for all sharing your experiences. It's been really interesting to hear how you've got to where you have today, hear some of your advice for others looking to break into the sector, and just to really kind of, I guess, firm that no career path is linear. It's not the same for everyone. There's a huge breadth in the tech sector of roles, of technologies, of organisations, and I think that's what makes it so exciting. Happy to open up to a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and we can give you a mic.
Hello, panel. Hello, everyone in the audience. I'm going to stand up because this will be easier. You've made some very good points today, but what I'm finding is that the reality of even getting seen by companies is really, really tough. Just to spend 5 minutes boring you about me, I've been in technology since 1984. I'm still passionate. I still play video games. I've got more Raspberry Pis at home than I've had hot dinners. I moved with the times. I started off at 16 on mainframes. I moved into Windows when Windows wasn't Windows. I moved to Unix and Unix became Linux. I've done MQ messaging. I've done work for banks. I've done all the good stuff. I can program. I can lead teams. I can't find work. It's so hard getting to actually talk to someone that hires now. The reality is, I'm passionate. I want to work. I can't get in the door. You can't get past the CVs. You can't get past the recruiters. And then they look at people and go, well, he's been doing it for 40 years. He's probably got some old habits. Yeah, I've got old habits and I've got experience, you know, and some of the stuff you're talking about needs to be controlled because you can't deploy some of this stuff, but having to support back-end systems that have been around for 20, 30 years. It needs guidance, it needs governance, it needs thought. You need to be able to move into the future with some of this stuff and not fall foul to the latest programmer who wants to try the latest bit of code because it's cool and sexy. It needs management in 3 years' time when he's moved on. What advice have you got for me and for guys in this room? And there's a few older ones here as well that maybe are out of work that have had a career in this. I fell in love with computers at 11 when this thing that looked like a stone tablet now was brought into a maths class and I wrote basic code. And that fired 40 years of passion that I've still got. How do I get back into this? And I don't think I'm alone in asking this because there must be a few people here that are having these issues. It is so hard to do now. Yes, I follow my passions, I follow my trends, but it's getting nowhere. I'll shut up now.
I can see that's very challenging. I mean, from in pragmatics experience, then what we definitely had that problem where we had a relatively new workforce in some of what we were doing because it was emerging tech, but actually we brought in, exactly as you're suggesting, people who had done some of that before because we didn't want to accidentally try to reinvent a wheel that already existed. So I think there is something there that behoves emerging tech companies in general to not automatically assume that because you're in emerging tech, every single thing you need to do is new, because some of the things you need to do are what's already there. Somebody's already invented that wheel and you need to go ahead. So I think it's tricky to give advice on exactly how to get back into that, but I would say that there's a requirement for the emerging tech sector as a whole to make sure that you don't just assume that absolutely everything you need to do has to be new and novel, because it really doesn't, and you really shouldn't, because you need to build on skill sets that are already existing. Otherwise, you'll actually slow yourself down in the emerging tech sector. So I think there's perhaps a bit more narrative and a bit that organisations can do to push the fact that that's required. I can't give direct advice, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. And I'd love to just see if we can take one more question before we break.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Vincent. I'm a management consultant at Capgemini Invent. And I just had a couple of questions. Well, it's sort of like a two-part question. It's more to do with the future of technology, mainly concerning the roles that you see as important and some of the roles that may be phased out. What are some of the roles you feel that may be phased out, might be more important? And then the second part is, as we move from we're in the AI space and we're going to move, I believe, more towards quantum computing, how do you see that affecting and disrupting the market? So the two questions are kind of interlinked there.
So, should I say this? I think management consultancy is one where, unless the big players get their act together and take a kind of technological strategy, they're going to be in trouble. I think a lot of the AI companies are going to be coming for that lunch. Having said that, I am firmly of the view that even as the technology improves and it gets more sophisticated, there is still going to be a human on the loop requirement. And so where we are at the moment, as I said before, you've got human in the loop, which is providing prompts to whatever AI system you're using. But I think all technology is going to have to be overseen by a human. That is going to be critical, irrespective of industry. And it largely, I think, is actually just the industries that keep up with the times, recognizes what the technology can do, are the ones that are going to be successful.
Do you mind if I add on just a little bit to that? One of the important parts of Digital Catapult is around innovation. And from experience and the technical people that I work with, which are far smarter than I am, that understand the technology, is without us in the room, the innovation doesn't really happen that much. And you might have a different opinion with AI going forward, but from what I've seen and what I understand is that AI does not have the capacity to do the innovation for us. It can give all of the old wheels with a new flashy rim on it, but it will not get you that new tire that will get the F1 car to go a mile faster. It lacks that. It sounds so preachy, but that human soul, and that is the key part of innovation, because you don't get anything new without someone trying to think of something new, and AI doesn't think of new. It thinks of old, rehashed, restyled, and that goes across a lot of sectors. Big enterprise companies rely on small SMEs to innovate because they're trying to get in the door. They're trying to do the next big thing. They're trying to do something new. Some of them might use AI, and in my job role, I use it, but not to the extent where it's doing my job, because it can't. But I use it to supplement my role so I can do more of that innovation, so I can think of the next feature that users will really enjoy, because I got that from what they told me, but they haven't spoken to AI yet. And AI is 6 months behind at all times. So there is worry, there isn't worry. It does depend on what sector you're in and what you're trying to achieve. But where AI will take a job, 6 new ones will pop up, because that's how we are. My job role didn't exist really 20 years ago. It only became popular 10 years ago, and it's only now been cemented in tech, and a lot of people like it because of where it is. So your job role that you're going for now might not exist yet, but in 10 years' time, you will have a job, and you will have that title, but it just doesn't exist.
Thank you. Do you want to come in very quickly?
If we have time, I'll quickly come in on the quantum AI piece, because I think it's important. I broadly see AI as a brilliant general purpose technology. It's very cross-cutting. It's very useful. I think to some degree, organizations have struggled to identify killer use cases for commercial value, is my broad sentiment. Quantum's a very different beast. The first thing to say is it will be hybrid, it will always be hybrid, and start thinking about quantum as part of your computing stack in the same way as we think about GPUs today. Quantum's also very good at solving specific or niche complex problems. We kind of know where these exist. They're in optimization, potentially some early machine learning stuff, and some simulation. But long term, the future is hybrid. And if you're thinking about this, start thinking about how the integration looks at scale and how we get those systems talking to each other and how we can see commercial value actually by making sure that we're reducing some of the costs in latency, speed, compilation of code. So, but happy to pick that up in the break if you want to speak some more about that. No worries.
Thank you. In the essence of time, I'm going to wrap up there and just say a massive thank you to you all for coming today and sharing your personal experiences. Really do appreciate it. On that note, we do have a 10-minute break now in the agenda, so please feel free to help yourselves to tea, coffee, biscuits outside. We'll be around if you have any questions, and we'll convene back in here at 4:10 for our next panel. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't make the briefing call. That's all right, no problem. Ella. Yeah. Yes, very well. Looking forward to something like we're going to cover lots of familiar ground. I think it's like similar themes, but I don't really think it's how they kind of it's like I think it's slightly something with we've got different lineup. Yeah, and we've got all of the kind of very technical. Yeah, I know it's been done. You guys.
So it goes for green is it goes green and then just
yeah, you go up there, you go like lit, like on the left and right. The next stage you can which is probably time well, it's already. It's really
Part of the consultant that
How are you? Yeah, very smart. You know you are
Yes.
so I need to. I'm going to
One until it goes green and then just leave it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Actually implemented. Not the story. So yeah, but I'm talking.
Is it not in no, Cruise is like CRU, which is ISE. This guy, yeah. And there'll be a couple of. Yeah, you'll get about 60%. Yeah, yeah, I think that's really easy. And then if you have especially in the land road, once that's done.
Okay, I'll be waiting for the details. Capgemini. So my name's Viola.
Yeah.
And
That's fine. I mean, I
we
can have
promote it as the register. We're doing quite a few.
Yeah. How many problems we have?
Yeah. An email address. I went to do stuff with working government. I like that question. I'm going to
I'm going on and then by the time you I'll be doing expected project rather than me getting you halfway through. So
yeah, well, good. Are you on LinkedIn? Look at it. Yes, everything we want. I know.
Someone, so we might have to be on the hand.
Oh, yeah, I got quick, but everyone seems to have.
Okay, cool. So we got this one of our speakers.
So many people.
We've got
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll send an email.
and there's two panels, so we should be good.
Yeah, but what you're talking
Got the
about.
hand on one.
Yeah. Cool. You too, my dear.
Yeah.
Did you say?
I have, yeah. Yeah, I was sitting in front.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
We can have queries. We get that. So I it's always a two.
Yeah, exactly.
We try and pull it back into regardless if you're like a massive so it's going to discount and
Cheap to go, absolutely.
sorry. Yeah.
See, it's actually sure. I think it's quite well.
Yeah, it's
just go nuts to get out of it. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have time? No, but it's just you go from yeah, that's it. It's good to we're on the weird mic, so we're wherever you want. Sure.
wherever you want to. Testing, 1, 2. If you can hear me out in the corridor, this is your warning to come in for the second panel. The last one ran over by a couple of minutes. We've got 5 excellent panelists here. There's a chance we might run over again, but we'll do our level best because we're going to be taking some excellent insights from some great speakers. But welcome back to everyone in the room. My name is Jake Wall. I am the policy manager for skills and the future of work at TechUK. I'll be chairing this panel titled Breaking in Pathways and Skills for the Next Generation of Tech Talent. Keeping with the theme, I feel slightly obliged that I should tell you that I'm also not from a technical background, and like seems to be another theme, I'm also a politics graduate, but also maybe something slightly different. I am also a secondary school dropout, so it shows you there are lots of different ways into technology, short courses, distance learning. There are so many routes in whatever you study. I think that's something that you can really take away from this. But this session is all about demystifying first steps into emerging tech. What opportunities are out there right now? What skills matter most? And how can you put your best foot forward to pursue a career in this space? As you'd have heard at the start, this discussion comes amid National Careers Week and our TechTogether campaign, where a key theme for us is widening access and making sure opportunities in tech are open to people from diverse backgrounds and experiences. So this is incredibly timely and relevant, and it's almost as if we planned it that way. Just a quick note on format. We'll use a few set questions to get us going, but we really want this to feel like a conversation between our panelists here. So please do feel free to build on and chime in on each other's points. But I will introduce each of the panel one by one. So next to me, I have Ian Bolton. He is the academic director at TechUK's sister company, Tech Skills, doing great work around industry accredited technology courses. Next to him, I have Stuart Edmondson. He's the CEO of the UK Electronic Skills Foundation, an organisation who are really focused on pathways into careers in electronics and engineering, including things like semiconductors. Next to him, we have Dr. Juliana Topazli, MBE, who is the Associate Professor for Enterprise and Innovation at UEL, bringing in views from her work around social entrepreneurship and higher education. Next to her, we have Joshua Carney, Senior Employer Engagement Manager at the Sutton Trust, who are a charity focused on social mobility and supporting young people around education and careers. And on the very end, we have Hussein Ali, who's a talent consultant at HP, who can share a frontline employer and industry perspective on talent, skills, and recruitment. So we've got a really stacked panel and plenty to get through. So I'll get started with some questions to everyone. So the UK tech sector is growing incredibly fast. Breaking in can feel, perhaps for lots of different people, quite daunting, especially as AI and automation are changing entry-level work. So I wanted to ask you where the biggest opportunities right now are in technology for someone maybe trying to land their first role, whether that's a career switcher or someone who's taken their first steps into the professional world, and what are the most in-demand skills for those roles? Over to you. I'm happy for anyone to jump in on that one.
Everyone's looking not. After you.
As Jake said, my name's Stuart Edmondson. I run a charity called the UK Electronic Skills Foundation. We are focused on the hard and deep tech sector. Jake mentioned semiconductors. I would say semiconductors is a growth area. We had Catherine speaking about pragmatic, both manufacturing and chip design. So chip design is definitely a growth area because all the AI we're talking about runs on hardware. I'd also say optoelectronics. Photonics is a really growth area, and there's a lot of regional clusters and a lot of entry-level, hands-on, technician-level jobs in optoelectronics.
That's very interesting. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in. Yeah, hi everyone. So as mentioned, I work at the Sutton Trust, which is a social mobility charity, focus on those from less advantaged backgrounds, and I work with employers and work with young people on their employability skills. Prior to that, I was working at early career, so basically graduate and intern recruitment at Salesforce, it's a big tech company, and also worked before that at GSK on their early careers hiring. So got quite a lot of experience on being on that kind of other side and reviewing CVs, reviewing applications, and really kind of seeing what stands out, I suppose, and some of those in-demand skills that employers are looking for. I think some of the things that I've learned from working in the tech sector, and it's been mentioned a ton of times here, is that uncertainty, that ever-changing, the idea that if you're starting your university journey in your first year now, by the time you're in the workforce, those specifics are going to be quite different. But I think some of the soft skills, the core skills, are always going to be there, and they're always going to be the things that employers are looking at. I think that idea, that adaptability, that resilience, the idea that your job next quarter might be quite different from what it is this quarter, is something that should excite you rather than terrify you. We've seen people coming in who think that's, an incredible opportunity, and then other people who are coming in for interviews who, freeze up when they're hearing about that, I think. So that adaptability, the flexibility, the critical thinking when it comes to AI. AI has the potential to level the playing field to a certain extent, but how you're thinking critically and actually applying it and using it in addition to your own thinking, I think are kind of the things that are going to help young people stand out, or people kind of entering this sector in general.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It really speaks to that kind of synergy of technology and kind of human skills that I think will really shape the future of work. Hussein, I don't know if you have any kind of reflections on your kind of role of recruiting for HP about the kind of things, the skills that are really important for you as a kind of recruiter. Are there any kind of skills that seem like they're non-negotiable for candidates as they kind of look to enter tech roles?
So there's a multifaceted question. So look, embracing machine learning and artificial intelligence it goes hand in hand with what you want to work in. There's always going to be a demand for people that can script, people that can code. That goes without saying. The high growth, the demand areas, it's twofold. First area is in cloud and DevOps. That's where we're seeing the biggest employ for people at the moment. AWS has got its foothold on the market, and there aren't enough people that we need to have the depth of knowledge to go and develop the things and engineer the solutions that the businesses want. So cloud as a whole, DevOps, there's a big demand for people that really know their onions in that stack. If you're someone who's who loves a complicated environment, loves building Lego, solving problems, then there's always going to be a need for software engineers, people that can really solve those problems, problem-solving abilities. These are the things that we as an organization at HP struggle to find, because sometimes people have a surface level of interest in these areas, but their technical depth isn't always demonstrated. So they're the two main points. And the more curious you are, the more AI and ML solutions you'll throw into those areas.
And that's really interesting. That's really interesting that you picked up on software engineering as well, because I think when we talk about AI's impact on roles, it's often the one that comes up. Will people need to code, things like that? But I think we've seen some recent data as well that shows it's perhaps not as simple as of a kind of transition as we might be expecting.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of coming across from what you've said there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest pitfall that early careers people fall into is they want these AI solutions to do the doing. No, it's to do the supporting of you doing the doing, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And when you're going into an environment where you're trying to sell your abilities and your personality to an employer, it's making sure that you're in control of what the automation is doing, and you're engineering the automated solution, but the solution itself is coming from you.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Does anyone else want to come in that before I swiftly move on?
Just maybe build on some of the things being mentioned. I think if before it was around a particular job and sort of a skill set, now we have to be very flexible and mix of different skills, because direction is no longer one line. Direction can take in different ways. And as mentioned, by the time you may be currently in education or upskilling or doing things, by the time you complete what you're looking for, it might look very different. So it's having that open-mindedness, and problem solving is definitely key in all of that layer, whatever the parts of the career you are in.
So please go ahead, Ian.
Thanks. My role is slightly different. We work and we accredit various institutions across the UK for upskilling, short courses, boot camps, training programs, undergraduate courses. So we're more in the academic side of the tech sector and supporting people into the sector. And I would say that all of that's very, very valid, but there is still a need for a lot of skills in a lot of places that you may still be interested in that might not be on the top 10 list or the top 2 list or the things that are coming now. So we've got a huge drive at the moment, for example, in the cybersecurity sector, really, really needing different people. And I mean different thought processes, disruptive thinking, maybe people who haven't seen that as a traditional career pathway that they should or could enter, trying to go and find potentially even people who've been hacking, to bring them into the space to get some new thought processes in there. So that's something. And also different areas that are not maybe traditionally tech. So we've got a lot of legal technology that we're working with now in terms of using tech to support user experience in legal firms, or financial technology obviously is taking off. So there's a lot of transferable skills. Even if you're a software engineer, you don't necessarily have to go and work for a software engineering firm or a tech firm. Do have a look at insurance tech, regulation technology, compliance, that ethics, green, climate technology, and sustainability. Huge growth areas that we're working with lots of institutions on as well.
I think that's really interesting, and I think it's that combination of technologies like AI and others with kind of other fields that are thinking about careers in technology and AI-enabled marketing, whatever field it is, you think about how technology can kind of intersect with that and really craft the career that is a digital role, a technology role, but doesn't necessarily have to be in the technology sector. What we see as kind of adoption of technology kind of proliferates is that almost every job in every sector will have some kind of digital or technology element. So I think that really kind of speaks to that case there. So moving on, I wanted to ask, how can someone show passion and curiosity for technology when they're thinking about applying for a job or in an interview? Maybe they don't have formal experience. We've spoken a lot about different pathways into jobs here. How can someone really effectively showcase skills that they might have acquired through different types of experiences? It might be self-study, short courses, or otherwise. Maybe Hussein, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, but getting yourself noticed to an employer or getting yourself noticed in an industry is really, really tough. Best way to get around it is to have a portfolio, build something, break it, and document it. You can't let a certification hold the power of you getting the job.
that doesn't happen. Let your portfolio do your work for you. And most importantly, have an opinion on it. You'll know if you've built something back up where the vulnerabilities are. You'll know where you've made errors in piecing things back together. And these are the things that employers really, really like to know. They want to know how you break something down, how you then put it across, and how it's relevant to them. And if you can build that chain, that gets you noticed ahead of all the other applicants that are putting together generic job applications, putting them in front of these employers that are being ignored. The way that you'll be noticed is if you're building something, you've broken something that's relevant to the employer, then you'll have their attention.
That's great. Yeah, I'll build on that. I think the important word that you used in the question is show. The three words are show, don't tell. You've got to be able to show your interest, your competency. And it's not so much, I talk to a lot of university students, and maybe controversially, I say, don't aim for the best degree that you can, because it doesn't differentiate you at all. What differentiates you is the additional things that you do, the relevant extracurricular activities and projects. You've got to build your own projects. You've got to design your own code, be a part of Formula Student or competitions or extracurricular activities. Have your own projects, because that's what's really interesting, because it's people like me, engineers, who are the hiring managers, and we're interested. We want you to know, someone mentioned having a superficial knowledge. You've got to have that deeper caring and interest and, dare I say, passion for the subject.
Yeah.
I think there was a...
Somebody who said...
One of the challenges at the moment, people are using AI tools to mass apply to jobs, and then getting sifted out by AI tools. Like, I graduated in the last financial crisis in 2008. Time to graduate. Thank God they didn't have AI tools then, because the amount of time we were putting into applications basically limited about how many jobs you could apply to. But it was the same, you were being auto-sifted out. And I completely agree with you, build stuff and have a portfolio. If you haven't got the chance to talk to anyone about it, and I think that is no one's really talking about that at the moment. There is so much auto-screening that's happening. It's interesting to get the opinion of Sutton Trust as to, how people from different backgrounds, comprehensive schools, for example, or even getting the chance to speak to people, go through that interview process.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat the question in case anyone didn't hear it. It was talking about how the recruitment landscape is changing. How can different people get the right opportunities, get in front of people to be able to demonstrate these types of things to recruiters and actually get their foot in the door, right? Joshua, if you want.
I can come in on that and a couple of the other points slightly more broadly. Like, we work with a lot of employers, some of which are saying they're using AI to review applications. Some are not saying it, but soon, if they're not already, probably are. They're seeing a huge uptick in the number of applications, to the extent where it's simply unmanageable. Well, those applications are coming in are effectively garbage. The kind of the skills, what if it even is going to get seen by a human, kind of articulating and understanding the kind of core skills, the core competencies, what that role genuinely needs, and kind of calling that out in the most obvious way on your application to make it super clear. If a human's reviewing it, 20 seconds or whatever, that it can be very, very obvious in terms of you've got the skills and how that kind of applies to the role. Like, as I mentioned, I worked in early careers recruitment for quite a few years. Probably the best candidate that I hired for our graduate program in solution engineering, only previous experience was working in a car rental place. We had tons of applicants who came from retail backgrounds or whatever else. Their applications wouldn't necessarily go anywhere, but articulating, I've worked in a high pressure KPI related environment. I've worked with difficult consumers and business clients. I've come up with this solution. That really massively helps. So thinking about the transferable skills in part-time work experience, whatever job that might be, how that can actually apply to something, and thinking slightly more creatively in terms of how that role requires the skills that you might have, even if you need to do a bit of self-reflecting, I think will hugely help. But as you say, the applications, the AI tools, it does require you to really people are putting more and more applications out than ever before. Employers are getting more and more in. It's AI. Yeah.
Don't have trust. They farm out all their applications to an AI bot. Then it's in a constant cycle.
I think then the message, sorry, if you don't mind, then the message is to make your applications super specific, because they do get noticed. We do filter out things that have been built with AI tools, but the last 4 intern and early career positions that my team has created at HP have been based on people creating something that our hiring panel have been interested in. One of which was a carpet fitter who was up against a top class Cambridge graduate. The carpet fitter got the job. And that is because they spent their time building things that were relevant. They had multiple layers of relevance in the portfolio that they were sharing, which then allowed us to create this opening for them, which was super specific for them. It's tough because it's easy to go out and send 10 applications off, but that one will get you noticed. It might not get you a job, it might get you an interview, but it means that the barriers are being blown down.
Okay, we're going to have to move on. Juliana, I think you wanted to come in.
Yes, just wanted to touch on a couple of points, actually. So we talked about showing what you do, but actually it's about sharing what you do. And sometimes through our learning journeys or any other journeys, we don't realize how much actually happens. And I can give an example. I met a lady, she was doing an MBA class and MBA at university, and then she's like, well, I really struggle to find work. It wasn't tech related, but the side conversation is like, well, what else do you do? Tell me a little bit about yourself. I found out she's a single mom. She had a child primary school, and she got so frustrated through maths teacher in her primary school that she actually learned herself to code, created a mini thing for her kids, which is a platform to learn basic math. And then within about 6 months, there were about another 5 other moms in the class were sharing it with their kids. Like, this is massive, this is quite serious. So there is a problem identification. There is a taking that problem into a proposal, some sort of a setting, developing and testing it, validating, and then looking what else can happen. And that's an amazing experience. Does she mention her CV? No, she doesn't. So things like that, we do things outside our work. We do things outside our school lives, and we don't realize how much is actually we gain in terms of skills and competencies, and we don't reflect it in our journeys, in our paperwork, in our in our CVs and job applications. And just on your point, I'm going to turn it all the way around, actually. Being on recruitment panels many, many times in industry and academia and others. And actually what we see nowadays, there is a huge amount of very good applications, exceptional applications, not necessarily written by individuals who are submitting them. So the AI goes both ways. And when you get shortlisted for the interview, sometimes you get quite surprised because you had a really good application, went through the process. Then when you're actually talking to a person, you realize, well, substance might be missing there. So I think there's this 2 sides to a story to work with to ensure that the market is ready. Individuals know how to best present them, showcase the journey and learning component, and actually show the companies they're willing to that.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're seeing in our work at techUK is that, the application volumes are through the roof for so many organisations, particularly for kind of entry-level and graduate roles. It seems like AI is really putting the kind of CV-based application process under pressure, and we're seeing organisations like Amazon and others look to more innovative ways of assessing candidates, skills-based hiring, task-based assessments. This is a kind of way that's much more aligned with the kind of assessing the competencies that they're looking for when someone gets in the door, rather than kind of reading a CV, reading a cover letter and kind of taking that as gospel. As AI does, it's kind of churning out lots of kind of great words that you can stick on a cover letter, great words you can stick on a CV, but the differentiation now is a kind of key factor. If everyone's CVs and cover letters are personalised in the same way, how does anyone stand out? That's where you come in, and that's where your skills, your competencies, you have to communicate them in a way that stands out. And amidst a kind of sea of AI assisted, and sometimes I might be using that word kindly, applications, that is kind of where you can differentiate yourself. I'm going to move on, and I've got a kind of question for each of you, and hopefully we'll have some time to kind of dive a bit deeper into kind of insights from each of your backgrounds. But Stuart, I'm going to start with you. for those looking at deep tech, electronics, semiconductors, kind of what technical skills and learning routes should they be prioritising? And kind of at your organisation, how does your work connect students and graduates to employers in the kind of industries that you serve?
For sure. I would say our part of the technology sector, the deep tech, the engineering, is largely SMEs. So the point about AI and applications is not as relevant. There are literally 1,000 companies in the UK doing electronics and related in the value chain of these large, say, or in the automotive sector. We work from everyone from leading universities all the way down to boot camps and people trying to get entry-level skills. And part of it is definitely you need knowledge understanding. There's no you've got within our subsector, you do need that knowledge understanding, but then you need to apply it. And it's the skills are not necessarily the specifics of a particular language or a particular discipline. And I'll give you an example in terms of chip design. Then an important reciprocal part of chip design is verification. Does the design do what it's meant to do? Does it? Nobody or virtually no university covers a module in verification. It's something that you have maybe the underpinning knowledge, underpinning attributes to learn verification, but it's something that you'll be trained in as part of the employers. So I would say don't worry about the specifics, gain that general sense of practical skills, be they hardware or software, and the thinking. So systems thinking, design-led thinking is really important, and recognize that engineering is an interdisciplinary activity, and think about those aspects. Just one final point about clusters as well. Our subsector is quite regional. So I mentioned optoelectronics. There's a really good cluster of companies dealing with photonics, very innovative in the Tor Bay area, so South Devon. And in the break, I looked at vacancies. The companies in that cluster have got level 3 apprenticeships, and they've got vacancies all the way through to senior positions in engineering. So there were about 30 vacancies within that Tor Bay cluster for engineering engineers and technicians.
That's really interesting, and it shows that the opportunities of technology not always concentrated in the places that you might expect, and there really are kind of opportunities everywhere if you kind of look for them. Ian, I'm going to come to you because I think one thing that came out of the last panel, and I guess is coming out of this panel as well, is it's not just about the hard skills, it's about the human competencies, the soft skills. So how can candidates recognise and talk about these things like teamwork, problem solving, even kind of their caring responsibilities in ways that stand out to employers? I think I've been to many of these panels where people talk about soft skills, but how do they really make sure this lands with employers rather than them just kind of paying lip service?
Sure, and I think so hopefully support some of the questions that were asked in the middle of a conversation earlier. Going back to the question that was asked as well, it's about being authentic. I think that would be the key thing that we find when we're working with all of our students, apprentices, whoever they are moving into the tech sector. I think there's two things. One is it's very easy to say those truisms that people go, I'm a team player, and all those things that you say at the beginning of conversations to go, yeah, I'm a team player. But what does that actually mean? I think there's two things we need to think about when we're working with our students is trying to give them the confidence to talk about things that they really do, not actually what they think the employer is trying to hear. And I think do really lean into stuff, Juliana was alluding to it, that you do, for example, because it's very easy to say, join a society, lead a society, run this, do extracurricular activities. A lot of you, and me included, would have had a job to get through university. You might be a young carer. You might have to go home and do all of that as well. Don't be afraid to evidence that. That is a huge amount of skill set that you're delivering there. Budget, time management, organization. If you're working in a coffee shop and you can't go and run a society, those soft skills. You're dealing with crisis management, customers that are angry. You're having to placate people, decision make, triage, all those things. You can evidence them. I think one thing that people tend to do is to almost assume that those softer skills have to be connected to the tech skills. And they don't. You can really lean into things that you do, that you are interested in and that you are capable of delivering. I think writing them down is great, but I think if you can demonstrate them, that would be even more outstanding. And I don't mean you have to do a PowerPoint presentation of all the things that you do that are soft skills, but think of things that you can relate to those skills that they will specify. And in fact, we had a conversation just this week with an employer who came to speak to a group of our students at Queen Mary University. And she's the director of recruitment for Sage. And the first 5 points on a job spec for a business analyst were all soft professional skills. They didn't get to the business analyst bit until right down the bottom. They were interested in, like, well, what would you do in this situation? How would you solve that problem? And what would you do in that? You know, can you give an example of when you've spoken to someone who was, heightened anger and you managed to bring them down to get them to understand your point? Those kind of things. Try and think of examples that you can give, and in your everyday life. And that's not meant to be demeaning. If you run a society and you're the head of the computing program and you're the student rep, well, that's outstanding, great. But there are other things you can evidence. And because we want to bring people into the tech sector who maybe are not able to go and join all the societies and run an extracurricular activity club and all those things, we need you in the tech sector. And I think that's, you asked about, where are state school opportunities? The tech sector are really quite passionate about now recruiting from diverse areas, different demographics, trying to get different people into the sector. So I would counter that point and say that there is a real recruitment on behalf of the tech sector trying to get the right people into it, because they're aware that they've got maybe a homogenous mix of people in there and they need to change that. But yeah, try and evidence it. And there are some really cool apps and tools where you can do short little videos. And a lot of interviews now, you can take your laptop in. You can take your laptop into the interview and say, well, could you look at this? This is me, I've done this, I've done that, and this is what I demonstrated, and this is how I've done it. So I would say, yeah, think of it in a slightly different way. Don't always try and tailor your soft skills to what the tech skills are.
I think it's really interesting, and I'm going to use myself as a case study here. When I got my job at TechUK, one of the things that I really emphasised was, after dropping out of secondary school, I emphasised how I went and took an open university course, and the way that I got myself back into higher education and where that led me. It shows things like motivation, passion, commitment, time management. These are all things that reflect really well on you. And if you take it from me, it's something that works. And it was the differentiator that got me in the door. I've been at TechUK for 7 years, I think, almost to the day. And I love my job. So it really is. There are so many different experiences. It's all about how you portray them and understanding what those life experiences gave you. Joshua, I wonder if you might want to come in on this, because I think there really are a diversity of backgrounds, lived experiences. They all give you something that you can bring to the table, right, in an interview. I wonder if you have any reflections on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We often get the question around kind of grades and pathways into careers, particularly in tech. We work with a lot of different industries at the Sutton Trust. Legal industry being one. If you want to work for a Magic Circle, get a training contract there, you need to basically get a first from Oxford realistically. The same is true for big banks. That's not true at all for tech, which I think presents a huge amount of opportunities for maybe those that have come from less traditional backgrounds, maybe less advantaged backgrounds. Despite that, the tech sector has a fewer percentage of people working in tech coming from less advantaged backgrounds than the legal sector. So there's a bit of a contradiction in some of the ways there. As has kind of previously been mentioned, those soft skills or core skills are hugely, hugely important. I think one that we haven't really discussed that much, I think, is the kind of commercial awareness. And that's always the thing that really jumped out at me when I was interviewing candidates. And I think that is something that you can kind of develop, no matter what you kind of is on your CV, through putting the time in, putting research in. A lot of the big companies that people here might be interested in working for, big tech companies, they are commercial enterprises, right? They're hiring you or would be hiring you, directly or indirectly to contribute to what they're trying to do, make money, drive shareholder value, whatever you want to describe it as. The first question we'd do when interviewing a candidate at Salesforce is, can you tell me what Salesforce does and why a customer would choose to work with us rather than a competitor? It's a very, very obvious question. More than half of candidates were not able to answer that, or not able to answer that in a way that was anything other than the first paragraph on Wikipedia about what Salesforce does, right? It's a very, very obvious place to start, but understanding how the roles that you're applying for, the roles that you want to go into, fits that company's bigger picture, how that company fits into the market and the gap in the market, and really how it all kind of fits together, how this role helps the company ultimately, is something that massively, helps that candidate stand out. That understanding of the business more broadly. Again, like I was working at GSK previously, which is a big pharmaceutical healthcare company. Any application, when you ask, why do you want to work here? And they would, write, I want to work at GSK before X, Y, Z reason. Any answer where you can cross out the word GSK and write AstraZeneca, and it would still make sense, basically went straight in the bin. So trying to be specific, understanding that business specifically, why that one, and how it fits, how this role fits in terms of that company's strategy, in terms of what they're trying to do, I think hugely helps in terms of making you more successful. There's a massive opportunity within the tech sector. It's not as stuffy. It's not looking at specific grades, backgrounds, schools as a lot of other sectors, but there's still a big gap there. And I think there's, a lot the employers can do, but I think, it's a lot of potential upside, I think, in the coming years.
I think that's really interesting, and it kind of leads me to a question for Hussein. What are some of the biggest mistakes that young people make when they, or anyone might make when they're applying for their kind of first role in technology? What are the mistakes that you see, and what are the common pitfalls that we can kind of warn all of our attendees and everyone against?
Sure. It's the vanilla application, and that is just sending a CV on, just sending a letter of application without any purpose. Purpose behind your application is what's going to produce some magic for you in the job application world, right? So having your CV does the job, right? And all the CV is meant to do is just list where you've been and what you've done, what you can do. One page, that's done. Your letter of application is what binds everything together and takes people to somewhere where they can see what you've showcased and what you've demonstrated. And that's where your interest lies. Your CV is just part of one stage of the application, but you're going to really gauge someone's interest by linking what you're saying in your letter of application into your portfolio, which takes away from your CV. They're the ones that end up getting noticed. They're the ones that end up being contacted and eventually ending up in a talent pool. So in a world where you can be whatever you are, just don't be vanilla. Not that there's anything wrong with vanilla.
Yeah, please go ahead, jump in.
I'm just thought one of the things we haven't really talked about is also SMEs. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking to today is about big recruitment firms doing big things with lots of big processes. We work very closely with lots of SMEs in the tech sector, and they don't do that at all. The first thing they'll do is go to your LinkedIn. They won't even look at your CV or application. They won't even have that process. It's a much quicker, much more fluid process. If you are less inclined to working in a big corporate and you don't want to go through all that process, have a look at SMEs, have a look at startups. So one of our board of employers, he's a great speaker anyway, he got down to his last 50 quid, plowed it back into his company, kept going with his startup. He now employs about 15 people. And his recruitment strategy is very, very different. It's very, very different because he wants disruptive people and different people. So I would sort of say it's not counter to anything that anyone said. It's really good. If you want to go and work for a big company, there's going to be a lot of hoops to jump through and you will have to go through those processes and you might get sifted out. He's also extremely open to people just contacting him on LinkedIn and saying, hi, I'm a UX designer. I really wanted it. And he's like, oh, that's cool. I'll have a chat to you. Even if it's just 20-minute coffee chat, he'll do that. So although you might think that's not the way to get a job, there are a lot of startup employers who are kind of awesome. Yeah, I can tell you an anecdotal example of one of our students. Sorry to take a bit of time on this, but just to sort of give you confidence maybe. One of our employers came to speak at an event at university. This very proactive student, this is going to sound a bit creepy, but the result was positive. He followed him to the station where he was catching the train and went, oh, yeah, you spoke to me at the thing. And he knew it was a 10-minute, because he went to the university, he knew it was a 10-minute walk. He had 10 minutes to pitch to this guy and he gave him an internship. So I would just sort of stress, these things are there and there are, video interviews you're going to have to do and sifting and all blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's fine. But there are different ways to get roles and sometimes you have to try your luck.
Sure. I'm glad Ian mentioned internships. It's something we haven't really talked about. Work experience for those that haven't worked is really, really an important de-risking factor for a hiring manager and a graduate, and a great way of evidencing your skills and your development. From a company point of view, rather than going through this process, getting you in for an internship means they get to look at you in that real work situation, see whether you fit into the organization, and then take it from there. So I would say any opportunity to get for any sort of work experience, work placement, internship, even if you think it's short term, actually can develop. And even if it doesn't work out with that company, it will help you with another company. And you might not, as Ian said, want to work. You might get an internship for a large organization, actually think you want to work for a small organization, or vice versa. There's no wrong first step, and any experience you can gain is valuable.
That's excellent. And I think these last two interventions may be linked to a question I had for Juliana. I think not everyone's going to take a traditional route. Not everyone might go for a big corporate. So what options exist for young people who want to do things like join a startup, but also maybe start a business, something like that?
Yeah, just kind of build on the conversations, and also to say that University of West London actually very well known for, it's the second in the country for graduate startups. It's known for its diversity. Majority of our population students are actually mature students, first in their family to go through the higher education institution. And that means that as an institution, we have to be more creative to ensure that the students have very solid pathways to really build their careers, their career pathway, and be financially sustainable in their lives. And one of those things I think underestimated when we're talking about the career pathways is actually not just working for startups, but creating your own startup. Because what we see, people complaining all the time about different issues, no jobs, no this, no that, no platforms, AI is, taking jobs. But actually, what is happening behind, not talked about, all of you have some ideas of how to solve those problems, right? And unless you take a step towards solving that problem and actually creating your own job, no one is going to do it for you. And we see a lot of innovation, fantastic innovation, university environments outside. We talked about the corporates are actually go to smaller companies for innovation. I think the previous panel has been mentioned. It does happen. How else you can actually translate your talent into something that makes a difference to the society? And there are lots of initiatives. I mean, UK, London is a fantastic place to consider enterprise entrepreneurship career. There's a lot of support from the government agencies, university schemes in a very safe environment to try things as a learning pathway. So we in the university embrace it. We create environments for incubation, acceleration spaces and physical spaces for participants, not just students connected to university, but also external, those innovators, try things, fail things, it's okay, or succeed. And there are various support mechanisms. So it's really, really important, not to think just a job and that's the final answer. Consider different pathways, internships, volunteering, placements, different exchanges, because you learn about what happens on the ground. And that's a very valuable asset. And only you have, and only you as an individual can make those connections. And very often it might not exist. You can actually get your thing going, wherever it is, a product or service, a combination of both, to help universities, to help big corporations, to help other companies on this panel and beyond to solve those problems we're talking about today. So happy to talk about it more, but I think it's something that definitely, should be considered as well.
I definitely think so. And as we kind of got all of these new technologies that are developing at pace, the kind of organisations that will come to define these technologies, maybe some of them are yet to be created, and maybe there'll be some of the people in the audience's companies in the future.
Yeah, and just to say, I'm involved in a couple of initiatives, for example, University of West London Business Incubation Programme and Help to Grow, which is funded by the government. And those innovators who come to those programs, they're always desperate for other skills and talent. Because when things start working, they need support. They can't do it on themselves. And what happens? They go to our students, they go to other communities out there, and they recruit those interns. And that's how it happens. That's how those small team starts. None of the large companies started as a large company. So, it's starting as that core, and you are the future of that. So I think it's really, really important to understand that.
Excellent. Okay, I don't know how much time we've got left, but we're gonna go to the audience for some questions. So if anyone has a question for my excellent panelists, please do put your hand up. I can see one there. Tess, I'll give you the mic.
Thank you. my name is Wise. I have a background in psychology, which I got at the University of East London. I've written down my question. For someone like myself who currently works in healthcare, I'm interested in how behavior insight can contribute to the tech sector. From your perspective, what type of roles align well with behavior knowledge, and what additional skills will someone like me need to develop and become valuable in the tech industry?
This question to myself or to anyone? Okay. I see it actually a very important skill because a lot of different types of technology which can solve things, but actually is the knowledge you have can connect and have that human element to connect. There's a lot of psychology in business, which is a massive area of development in research. And actually we see a lot of innovations which is focusing on behavioral skills. So I think it's, do you have any particular area of tech? Because psychology itself, there is a lot of tech innovation in even psychological journeys and support and dealing with probably some of the impact of technology. In early years education, for example, there's a lot of innovation happening to support parents and mental health issues, etc., etc. So there's so many pathways I can see in my head right now, but happy to talk.
Yeah, I'll just jump in as well. I mean, if you want to stay in the health sector, there's an awful lot of health tech.
Yeah.
Sorry, because we don't want to lose people who are really you've got psychology. Is it if you finish the degree, or are you still? Yeah, you finished the degree. I mean, I'm not fantastic. And very well done. But I don't think we want to lose people from that specialist profession. There's a huge wealth of health tech opportunities, health informatician, where you can, and you'd need that health, even the AI apps that are in health tech to support people in terms of their own well-being, understanding those requirements ethically. Someone like a psychologist saying, look, ethically, that app is not a good idea. That one is a really good idea because it actually is giving ethical advice. There would be a wealth of opportunity to dovetail your health skills with tech. That would be my answer.
Yeah, literally was going to say the same thing. It's a massive growth area, telemedicine, biotech, and those, when you draw the Venn diagram, yes, you need a core of the engineering technology, but around that and those interactions are exactly as Ian said.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions? I think we got one here.
Yeah, a lot of what you all said resonated with me quite a bit. I feel like I'm doing a lot of what you're saying already because I have 2 portfolios and basically like data science stuff. And I applied to Amazon and I made like a personal statement and I actually made the portfolios for them and I made a CV specifically for Amazon. And when I got there, like to apply, because it was an apprenticeship, they don't have like an avenue for me to show it to them. And so that was fine. So then I changed everything and just used the personal statement and the portfolios to make the CV like better, like reflect everything. And I got past the first stage and I'm still waiting on the second stage actually. But I guess the thing is, I'm not at a point where I can apply for a job because it's too, I don't want to say high, but kind of like and when I apply for apprenticeships, I actually have like loads more than what the apprenticeship expects, so that I can't show everything. And it's a frustrating position to be in because I've self-taught myself Python and SQL, and I'm fluent in Python now, and I use Visual Studio Code to make my portfolio with lots of annotations everywhere and like data sets and all that stuff. And yeah, I even taught myself the GCSE maths and I got a 7. And yeah, it's a bit, it's not negative, but it is a bit frustrating because I feel like I'm like a rocket and I'm right at the precipice of being able to do something. Like I could do it right now, but there's nowhere to fire off to.
I'm not going to try and continue that metaphor, but yeah, that's, so there's 2 things. One is, I I can certainly have a chat to you afterwards. And there's a lot of universities, institutions, private providers who will something called RPL or APL, recognition of prior learning. So when you apply for apprenticeships, if you can evidence that learning rather than, and say, well, I've done this and done that, they will allow you to access their course a little bit quicker. Second thing is, some of those larger firms, to get an apprenticeship in those larger firms is pretty competitive. And that's nothing on you. It is just very, very competitive. There are all sorts of organizations and providers who will be willing to support you with an apprenticeship. Go through the Association of Apprenticeships. You can talk to us. We can find different alternatives and different pathways. And there are other providers in the room I can already see here who would be interested in talking to you about that. Hang in there, I would say, and that's not meant to be a patronizing sort of answer. But I think what you've done and what you've tried to do in recognizing that learning, some universities and providers will accept prior learning, and then you start at a different stage of that apprenticeship.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think we might just be about time. We've got a big question at the back. Go on then, we'll take one more.
Thank you. So great insights from the panel. Really loved all the talk about build, break and rebuild, transferable skills. As a department, I work for the Department for Work and Pensions, and I'm sure you've all seen the Get Britain Working white paper. Youth unemployment at the moment is the highest it's been since 2015, 16%. The ask from the government right now is not even so much give us a job, as we realise there might be a bit shortage in jobs at the moment, but how about work experience? It has been mentioned quite a few times on the panel. Now, I love it when we come to these events, we hear the good talk, everything sounds so fantastic, but we walk out that door and nothing really happens. So I'm here just to make a plea on behalf of even some of the people are here who would have come through our department to open up your doors to create work experience opportunities for them so they could strengthen the skills they had. I mean, I can really resonate with the gentleman that spoke about being out of work for quite a while. How real can we make these opportunities for desperate, genuine job seekers across the UK to get Britain working? Thank you.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so I totally, understand your point. At the Sutton Trust, we offer about 1,000 work experience places in partners across various sectors each year. I kind of understand that's also not going to, plug the gap that's there. I think I kind of touched upon it in one of the earlier responses, I suppose, but trying to, there's not enough work experience in the relevant sectors, in formal work experience to go around for everyone that wants them. But trying to think about, if you are looking for a role, the experience that you have and how that actually applies, even if you're thinking about some of those skills, thinking a little bit outside the box and trying to paint a picture with your applications in terms of the sorts of industries that you want to go in, the skills that you've got in the maybe part-time roles that you've got, but combining that with short courses, insight days, online things to really paint the picture that this is the path that you want to go down, even if I understand there isn't enough work experience opportunities to go around. Ultimately, one other thing that kind of changes to the Gatsby benchmark and things where in the future there will be a lot more, hopefully, I think, proposed opportunities for people younger throughout their schooling from year 7 above to do various insight days work experience throughout their schooling, which may help. I appreciate it's not going to necessarily help the people here, but it's something I think, there's things that can be done now and things that will be done in the future.
Yeah, I think I've go ahead, Juliana.
Yeah, just wanted to touch on. It's really interesting because sometimes we see a lot of students coming in and say, or coming to these events, and they approach us and say, okay, do you have a work experience? And that's not a starter really, because it's kind of automatically puts you in a disadvantaged position. I think it's about building relationship. There is a saying, 80% of jobs are not advertised. And actually it's quite true, because it's actually hard to find a good talent, believe it or not. Not many jobs, but it's hard to find good people. So the employers want to find those people, but they want to be confident that you are the person who will contribute to the vision, understand what happens, and be able to contribute to those roles. I failed a few times in my own enterprise journey and succeeded. And I've also been running social enterprise for the last 14 years. One of my first employees was actually from Sutton Trust, from the work experience. And they stayed for me for 6 years and done amazing work. But it started from the conversations, from networking, building relationships, going into it. So the message is really learn what happens in the industry, be curious, because curiosity will get you into situations you will never even be able to connect. You will never know that you'll get a job at that point. In fact, it happened to me several times. So it's really important to take advantage of these events, talk to people, but also not trying to sell yourself immediately. It's create the relationship and really understand what matters. I think, Joshua, you talked about, the first question. My first question when somebody comes to interviews, I always say, what's the latest have you seen in the industry on news? Yeah, not even the company, but curiosity about what actually happens within the space. And it's amazing how people have no idea, or they haven't even thought of doing it, because that gives you that curiosity spark. It's like, right, this person really wants to know. And I think that's really important. But also work together. Sometimes, our institution is big, different departments, and I'll be, truthful, we don't really work together. But it's really important to talk to different people, different departments, get different perspective of things, and then be open to various opportunities, not just kind of focus on one thing. If somebody offers you a week of volunteering, well, that will be quite cool, actually, I find out more. That will lead to the work experience or internship or something else. So it's seeing beyond that immediate impact of what you're asking for, I guess.
I think that kind of comment around relationships and network building is a perfect segue to me wrapping this up. I'm very conscious I'm between all of you and the pizza that we've got outside. So it's be remiss of me not to kind of wrap up and let you get there. Thank you all for a great discussion. Please do give a round of applause to my excellent panelists this afternoon. I think between these guys on the stage here and our first panel, we've really heard a lot about the diverse routes into technology careers, the kind of different types of skills and experiences you can have, and kind of lots of learnings hopefully that you can take away. And we really do implore you to get out there and have conversations with people who are here. Networking, relationship building are really key parts of business. They might be what lands you your next opportunity. So, but if the opportunity for you to network isn't enough to keep you around, there is pizza outside. But thank you very much for coming to this to this event on future careers in emerging tech. Please do visit our website, techuk.org. You can see all about our Tech Together campaign and our National Careers Week stuff. But I'll let you get to the pizza. Thank you, everyone.